So hi everybody, today we're chatting to Linda, who's the owner of the Touch Company, and they create amazing brand experiences and training experiences for people. So you can go and check out our website and information on the page. Welcome Linda, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
So maybe we can kick off with you telling us what life is like through the lens of a 7.
Life is a cornucopia filled with delicious things to eat, exciting things to do, interesting people to meet, beautiful things to see, and wonderful experiences to have. That's what life is like. It's very exciting. Occasionally your body will remind you that maybe it's not all quite as fabulous as you're currently experiencing it, and there might be some other stuff going on. So I think that's how I experience life, and I think it's rich and wonderful and exciting. And as a 7, I'm always looking for opportunities and what other wonderful things are in the world. But I also think it's not about just being greedy. I know that we've got a reputation for, being gluttonous and wanting to eat every single bonbon in the whole box and maybe just take a bite out of it and then maybe not feel so good. But I do think that's not necessarily an absolute essential in a 7. I think there's something about being able to enjoy everything. I think it's about managing expectations and looking for the best in things. So I think it's really about having a lovely cup of tea on the veranda and not having to have a piece of cake with it. Just really enjoying the tea and listening to the birds and kind of just appreciating every moment. What I have noticed, I think one of the big things for me is that I magnetically will frame things positively. I don't know how people don't see what I see. And it's taken me a long time to understand, like, are we not looking at the same thing? And yet you go, oh, it's cold. And I'm like, oh, it's cozy. And kind of recognize that maybe it's cold. And then it can be cozy. But maybe people's coldness is also a valid experience, rather than saying, you have to be so miserable.
So
is that really necessary?
So the plus side of that for you, when you're talking about the reframing and always seeing things in the positive, how does it actually serve you? What works for you about that?
Well, I mean, it means that I can be very present. I feel, obviously other people are like, well, you're not actually present in the circumstance. But for me, it is, the way your brain works is the story that you tell. So it really is, I'm such a believer in where your attention goes, your energy flows. So in any situation, if you're going to put your energy into the 3 things that are aggravating you, you're going to have an incredibly aggravating experience. If you're going to put your energy onto the things that are working or the things that you can enjoy in that circumstance, you can really enjoy it. I don't think it's about denying that not everything's perfect. And I think what supports me is possibly just to say, okay, well, what can I do about that? So if there's something uncomfortable, how can I change it? If I'm not enjoying a component, what do I not want to do? I actually think, I've been thinking really about how people, who are these people? But there's some kind of sense about a 7, that we're very flighty or that we are party animals. I do think there's something about maybe being, well, for me anyway, being really sensitive to discomfort. I know on the kind of emotional level to being very uncomfortable, not now, but really when I was younger, I would ricochet away from sort of pain or unhappy people. If I couldn't help them, if they couldn't cheer up or find something in their situation, I actually couldn't be around it. It was so distressing to me to be with people who are unhappy. And I don't mind, I could manage grief or I could manage moving through something, but if people were just going to kind of stay there and wallow, and I actually couldn't manage it. And I think actually it supported me in that I've chosen the people that I surround myself with, that they are real, that they are wanting to live and be authentic. And it's not that you're not going to have pain. I think pain is a part of life. And I think that's what's driven the decisions. That's why I do focus on what's happy, because I realize that the world is a terrifying place. And I realize not everybody thinks that. I thought it was obvious that the world is uncertain, dangerous. Doing good, being a good person is no guarantee. see South Africa, see the Holocaust, see history of the last 2,000 years, see the world. And I've always been amazed at people's courage or stupidity of just like entering into things or inviting people into their life or having children in relationships after 5 minutes and thinking it'll all be all right. And I've always thought that as a 7, we're kind of cast as, oh, we're such optimists in rose-tinted glasses. And I almost feel like as 7s, we're the opposite. For me, I feel like that. Like, actually, it's because I'm aware of the fragility of life and the opportunity of early death, crazy accidents, extreme pain, that I really look to treasure things when they are sweet, and relationships when they are working or in sync, and really try and put energy into holding on to those, and also then understanding that they don't last and life moves and people shift and things are not always synchronous. But actually, if you're careful and you put some attention to it, you can design some wonderful things that can bring out the best in people. Whereas if you just go, well, life's not like that. Life's actually not happy. And actually life is, and it makes you tough. So it's better for you that you do that. I'm like, my 7ness is objecting and saying, I don't think you've got to have broken bones and then feel pain in life and say, well, that's life and it makes you strong. It's like, strong for what? For
it's
more
almost
pain.
like the optimism sounds like it's become a coping mechanism for difficulty. So instead of getting sucked into the difficulties or the challenges or the potential dire state of the world, the 7ness has chosen to put a positive spin on things and chosen to look at the world more optimistically. But I'm quite curious that you noticed it even at a young age. So it doesn't sound like it was necessarily something that you've learned through life. It sounds like it was something that you noticed quite young.
Oh yeah, no, I thought when I was very young. I mean, I can remember when I had like very strong beliefs. I remember when I was like 6 and kind of noticing, that things weren't all easy for everybody. And sort of making a decision about who I wanted to be around. I had a friend, I'll never forget, I had a friend who I said to her, I'm scared of the dark, don't lock me in your Wendy house. She had older brothers. And I said to her, I will not speak. Don't do it. And she was like, no, you go in. I was like, really? I mean it. Like, I'm not going to, if you do that, don't, because I don't want to, I'm very scared of it. So of course she locked me in the Wendy house and I screamed a little bit and I bashed the door and then I came out and I went and I said to her mother, call my mother. And that was me. I went home and my mom came to me later, like a week later, the mother had been phoning and saying, you're the only 2 girls we lived on a farm, like in this whole district of your age. Don't you want to? And I was like, no, can't trust you. That would just be foolish of me to do that. Of course, I was 6, but my judgment might not have been as fantastic as I thought. But actually, I remember when I was 13, I remember having a little bit of like a moment and realizing that all the fairy tales and all the narratives and all the stories that we learned to buoy us up and to believe in the power of good, I kind of worked out that actually wasn't the way life worked. That good people suffered and children were abused and, there was no guarantee that, but to live a good life was to live a good life and had its own reward, but there was no actual elimination of pain or heartache, and actually evil triumphs and people get rich and torture others, and that's how it was. And so I actually remember I came back from, I got picked up from school and I was at home, and then I was like, okay, so that's how it is. So what you're going to do? I was already a very sunny child. I'd obviously had this awareness a lot before, but that was kind of a conscious thing. And just to say, well, that's okay. It's always been thus. I think history is very helpful to say the world has always been terrible and wonderful, and terrifying and fantastic and gorgeous. So it's then, where do you want to live and what choices do you want to make? If you believe pain is inevitable, then you can enter into it. I do believe, but I think you can make different choices.
Well, I'm kind of hearing 2 things. So the one side of it I'm hearing is a natural ability to be sunny and optimistic and to make choices that bring delight and pleasure and joy into your life. But I'm also hearing maybe it's not even conscious, as you mentioned with the child locking you in the Wendy house, but it's almost like a instinctive thing to avoid things that are unpleasant. So I'm not doing this. This is not good. This is ugly. This is unsafe. Whatever the unpleasantness is.
So I do think it's a mechanism that was locked into me, obviously, from when I was very young, that I'm not conscious of, because it's an automatic framing without even necessarily knowing. So now I can kind of be aware of it and can notice, okay, why are you doing something? Whereas I think previously it was more of an instinctive thing. So as much as my head has framed it and said, oh, I'm making these choices for this, I think the movement, as kind of 7 away from pain or away from that was just, I had to get away. I've had a friendship who didn't, and I didn't even know what I just could not be around that. And I was trying to understand why, but the drive, that kind of emotional thing, just to get away from the pain or the opportunities of the anticipation of pain, and I think that's what is often the thing that, when I was reading about sevens, is just to kind of say that, we don't believe in our ability to manage it. So we don't have confidence that we'll be able to manage the pain. So there's a kind of a lack of confidence that we will be able to manage it. So we avoid it.
And so a fear of maybe getting stuck in the pain.
Yeah. And not being able to get out of that. And I do think it's absolutely instinctive, because if I think about it, or if I'm faced with circumstances, or if there is somebody very ill, or a really traumatic thing to be dealt with, I'm good at it. I can be very present. I'm very grounded. I can take a lot on, but I think that's from more kind of grief or illness or dying. Those things I can manage because they feel more real. But distress and hurt that people inflict, I find that kind of collateral damage reckless. So I won't put myself in line for that, because I think that's well, and I don't think, this thing, oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I think is bullshit. What doesn't kill you makes you weaker. This idea that, oh, you've had 4 rounds and that's somehow, you have 4 rounds of chemo, now you're going to be strong. Like, no, you probably have a destroyed heart, your back will break, your bones have been eroded, you have survived it. And there is a sense, obviously, of having survived something and being more appreciative. But I say, let's start off with being appreciative and live in gratitude and enjoy every moment. And as I don't believe that you need to be that unconscious that you somehow have to have pain and heartache to appreciate the sweetness of life. Let's start off appreciating the sweetness of life and be aware of that. And I know that people sort of say, oh, well, that's from a philosophical point of view, but to really taste pain, and it's like, okay, I'm good. I'll do this thing.
It's so true, because the perception of sevens is often plugging into that sunniness and that ability to, feel gratitude or see the good side of something occurring. And you also mentioned the word flighty earlier on. What are some of the other ways that you find sevens coming across that aren't necessarily true for sevens?
I think what I really do resonate with is not liking to be limited. So that feeling of not having options, whether it's with anything, I like to have a lot of options, whether it is with food, with clothes, with travel, with jobs, with work. So my job is ideal. I work with a big range of properties and different businesses and different amazing people on really interesting projects. And sometimes it's very small and personal, and sometimes it's very human, and sometimes it's a group. So I have this wonderful variety of relationships, and then they're quite long-term, so they're very rewarding. So and of course my work is symptomatic of my sevenness. because it's all about potential. It's all about joy. I work in hospitality, so it's all about people wanting to enjoy themselves and how do we create that. So I work in this like incredible space, which is safe and remarkable and, you know, brings out the best in people. And you have these wonderful teams, and then you have guests who are just wanting to enjoy themselves or seeking relief from a very long year and wanting to treat themselves for something. So, you know, it's hilarious how well I've positioned myself in terms of my temperament. But there is something about liking, really enjoying variety, really liking, and that cross-pollination. You know what I mean? Of being able to take something from art or music or opera or something from a gallery or from a book, and to be able to bring those disparate things together in a way that's original, or you can collaborate. So there's always that joy of not quite knowing how this monkey mind is going to pick things up and thread it together. And then you can offer it and someone else takes it into a totally different direction of their own and makes it their own and creates something else out of it. So I think that has really served me because I can always see an opportunity, and I'm able to instantly see where the opportunity is.
And you're describing it as a desire not to be confined or to have choices or freedom taken away from you. What happens if you don't have choice available to you? How do you react?
So I've designed my life that hasn't happened. That's what's really terrifying about me, is that I've designed my life to exactly suit me. And I know you're not supposed to live in your box. I know you're supposed to, you know, push yourself out. And what I've done, honestly, is just design my life to really to serve me. So I've got amazing people who are all genuine, very different to me, but are real, who are genuine, who are not. And I don't have any sort of, I've got wonderful relationships with my close friends, and then really amazing relationships with teams that I work with for a long time. So I'm in long relationship, 10, 15 years with a lot of teams. I've watched people grow and I've worked with them. I have very little aggravation. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I keep my needs quite small, so I'm never obliged to work with people I don't like. So in a way it's limited me because I'm not massively ambitious. I'm very happy with what I've got. So possibly it's limited me in that I won't take on the pain of like running a company or having a lot of people report to me, or dealing with contracts maybe that are big, that I've got a multitude of different people, some of whom I may not be aligned with. So I end up working with a small team, maybe 4 or 5, or the directors or the owners, and the people who I resonate with, I work with them, we collaborate, and I have fantastic relationships, you know. And we have trust.
Well, it sounds like it's serving you. It sounds like it's working for you. It doesn't sound like you feeling as if you're missing out or holding yourself back in any way because of that aspect.
You know, I've thought about it. I've thought to myself, am I playing it safe? Like, am I playing in a smaller space where I can control things and I have this kind of freedom and these relationships? Should I have pushed myself, or should I have gone out for bigger things and actually done an institutional kind of stuff? But, you know, I don't enjoy. I'm very systematic in terms of the systems that I work with. So I don't enjoy it when people don't have systems. I'm a great believer in a system, and I understand its power and a ritual and a support. So I'm quite big on systems in terms of when they support groups or communities or business, obviously, and the structures within that. And I'm an advocate for it. But I'm not a great designer of systems, and I'm a good designer of systems, but I'm not a compliant person in terms of other people's bigger systems. And I don't have, my gift is not that. You know, I work with other people who have that amazing gift to really be able to design a full systems with all the structures and understand the layers. I'm really in that interpersonal space. I'm in a group space. I'm in a guest experience and a journey. That's kind of where my gift lies. And so I've played into that. So, you know, I have thought about it. Have I just been playing it safe? Should I have pushed myself? Am I just working in my comfort zone? And that's a definite possibility that I've just framed it. But, I'm looking at it with this brain, and you've got to really be skeptical and say, okay, how long are you going to gnaw on this bone? Because you're happy. Are you? And you keep looking at it and thinking, am I just a really good framer? Is this just so firm for me that I just can't see without looking at it? Or actually count your blessings. You're incredibly lucky. You have got, genuinely, if I look at it, even without the 7 frame, just to say, like, actually, if I think about my health, if I think about my relationships and my husband, the people I work with, even from a very skeptical external person, if you had a look at them, I think you'd, find them quite delightful.
I suppose that's the flip side of personal development or personal growth work, is that there can be a tendency to then pull ourselves apart, or to look for what's wrong, or to find ways that we need to improve. And maybe because of that, we don't necessarily show gratitude for what is, or appreciate the sunny side of life, so to speak. And I suppose for 7s, that's a natural tendency, which is so refreshing to a lot of people, and why a lot of people are drawn to 7s, because they kind of tap into that lightness and that optimism, and that you can feel it for sure around a 7. But I'd like to ask you in what way you find your 7ness maybe trips you up. Where does it keep catching you?
So I think with the 7ness is I can, and I become more conscious of it now, but I think this, possibly framing things, like if you've got, maybe it's a fear of failure or fear of not doing things. And instead of acknowledging that and saying, well, actually, why do I not want to pursue this? At framing it for another reason. So I think that you really have to check, is that, are you doing it because you are maybe scared of failure, or there's something unpleasant that you could work through and might be important for you to work through, but have you just said, oh, actually, I don't need to do that, or it wasn't important anyway, or actually, was it important for you or for somebody else? I think that's the first thing. And possibly the other thing is that sometimes I've found that if I really need to, I'm quite conscious of my body in terms of like being grounded and having control of it. But I think what's really served me is like breathing practices or yoga. So when I'm physically grounded, then I'm energetically more present and very open, and that really serves me. And if I don't do that, if I don't ground myself, if I don't breathe, I can kind of feel myself getting light. So there's almost a sense of like, I don't have enough weight, which I've got plenty. So I'm remedying that with chocolate, but that's apparently not, it doesn't help. Physically I might be quite weighty, but sometimes there's that kind of feeling that I don't feel substantial enough, which is quite interesting, because mostly I don't. Mostly I'm quite energetically kind of connected to a space or where I am, and I can kind of occupy it and hold it and be very open to other people. But on occasions I can feel like if there's too much going on in my mind, that I can kind of feel myself doing that. And I think sometimes what I've really become aware of, and possibly when I was younger it was worse, but it's still, I have to really check myself, is to overestimate myself. Because I'm quite quick, and so conceptually I can really grasp something quite quickly, but is to really be respectful of the depth of a subject. So even though I might have the flavor of it, and I can probably combine it with something else, and it would be useful, but it is not, in fact, mastery, And so I'm very kind of respectful of people who have mastery of something, and the depths and the kind of breadth of people's knowledge. So even though, I read a huge amount and I'm very interested in things, and I will have, I am careful. I trust, I like to think I'm not arrogant with things, that I've got a taste of something and I can enjoy it, but is not to make assumptions that you actually have the essentials of something, that maybe all you have is a sense of it, and then really to be able to ask the right questions and listen to see what it means for other people. And I think the big place where 7 trips me up is not always appreciating I mean, obviously, once again, as you get older, you get better at these things. Well, we should. But the rhythm that people have and how much time people need to process things and how much time people need to make sense of something connected to themselves before they can action it. So I think I think that's really where I've really had to be disciplined. And I still find that difficult because I kind of want to go.
Okay.
So, I kind of go, oh, okay, that happened and that happened. So obviously this is what we could do and da-da-da. And then these are the 4 options. And, oh, look, we could do it like this, 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 and this. And people are still like, what happened over there?
Okay. So you're moving ahead too quickly and they're not necessarily part of that journey or thought process.
And you can't actually explain it. I mean, you can, that's my job. But it's really to say, okay, what do they actually need to know? I've done those 5 things and I've thought about them, but actually it's too much information for people and it doesn't make sense. Their canvas can't hold all of that. Mm. What they need is a close-up of this here, is to say, this is what we could do and this is how it would serve you and it would address this issue. Because that's actually what they need to know.
Yeah, so you've made the connection quick, and you've already solved it. So you've almost got to consciously go back and pull apart how they might have interpreted it. And then on top of that, what's important and what's not important so that you can really craft a story for them.
Exactly. Because I like a lot of context. So I'm very interested in all the impact and like what the interpersonal, what the business stuff is, what are the values, what does it look like for the inside team, the outside team. And so I've got this lovely rich picture with a lot of different connections and flowing. This is a driver, this is a link, this is kind of working. And then it's like, oh, this is a kind of a dynamic thing, which is just overwhelming for people, not particularly interesting necessarily to other people. They really, it's like, so what? So it's really to be able to think, well, what do they need to know now? What's the best information I can give them, and in what format would work for them? Mm. So what is their need, and how can I provide it? And then how do I give it to them in terms of what we say with them? So they think, what's in it for me? How would it serve them, and their agenda and their needs? Whatever that might be, if it's for information or certainty or whatever, so that I can communicate it in that way, and not get so excited that I'm like, woo! And also the other thing with being a 7 is your energy and enthusiasm can subvert your message, because sometimes the energy and or the lightness, you're trying to make light of something because you believe it'll make the medicine go down as sugar, but actually it just needs to be medicine sometimes. And to be comfortable with that. Whereas, as you often want to relieve kind of thing or make something lighter so that people can take it on, but sometimes just understanding that it doesn't necessarily always serve. And sometimes it's okay. Medicine can be medicine and it doesn't need any sugar. And just to kind of, be comfortable with that, and being comfortable with occasionally being the bad news bear.
I love that idea. Sometimes medicine just needs to be medicine. Linda, you talked about, you've used the word light. In this context, you're talking about it as in lightening up the mood and maybe making bad news a bit more palatable. But it sounded like you were using it in a slightly different way earlier, when you were describing the sense of not being grounded and not in your body, when you're talking about your breath work and your meditation and your yoga to kind of keep you here and now. Can you help us understand what you mean about that lightness, and how that impacts you? What happens when you go into that space?
So I haven't had it for a while, but it's a feeling, it's like a sort of feeling of being untethered. So it's kind of, you almost feel untethered in your body. It's almost like you're lifting. So I did laugh because when you see those, the images of the 7, their feet off the ground. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe they're onto something there. But there is definitely that kind of feeling of sometimes kind of being so full of possibility, or just in your head and thinking about things and kind of running off with ideas or opportunities or futurescapes, rather than staying in the here and now, and kind of just being here and presencing. So, and it's an interesting thing because, in my work, obviously, especially with the training, I kind of pride myself on presence, and on being in the space with people. But what's interesting is I have that work, but I have a lot of the brand experience, the guest experience, the journey, the kind of design work in terms of the touch points and the physical stuff, the decor, the signage, the concept work, all the kind of communications, which allows me to kind of play. So I think it's interesting that I've kind of given myself that space, because that can kind of make you feel that you just kind of into so much potential that you kind of move forward. And the danger with that in particular, so one, it can leave you feeling a bit untethered if you kind of just too much in your head and in your thinking, that you're not necessarily present to what's actually going on, whether that's with like a positive frame or being in the future and kind of being in potential, rather than just staying here and saying, so rather than saying to someone, oh, well, so, you got fired, but hey, this will give you time to, do that planning that you want, or now you can look for the opportunity you really want, just to be in the moment and say, that's really terrible. It must feel horrible. And just stay with them here, even though your mind's already just.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, because I suppose it's learning empathy, isn't it? It's learning that being in the here, good or bad, and everything that comes with it, including the dark emotions that sevens can shy away from, is actually creating a sense of empathy for someone. Whereas it can feel like a tendency to just want to make things better.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not to make things better, and actually that things don't actually need to be made better. Like, actually, there's nothing wrong with what is. So I think that's also the thing, is that it doesn't have to be a blessing in disguise. It is what it is, and it's going to move, and that might be good, but actually it's okay just to be here. And it's also just to check, is that discomfort yours? That you don't want to be. That person might be quite happy just to be really angry and disappointed, and you're the one who's or is that person in distress? And then that's okay as well. So I think it's that kind of thing is that you don't want people to be distressed. So you want to fix things. And also possibly because you're oversensitive and very keyed in to having that negative emotion, to not wanting to experience it. Or, I don't know, because is it that this thing with sevens being so flighty, is it that we feel it but maybe don't enjoy it? Because people kind of get a sense, oh, you don't feel it, you're always happy. But is it because it's exquisitely painful to us? Maybe more so than for other people, that we do feel huge joy. And the reason we can feel such huge joy is because we understand the huge potential for pain and can really, really sense it. Because it's kind of this thing that they often say about a seven is like, oh, we don't want to feel the pain, and we just keep moving here into, we just want to run away from it. But is it actually that moment, which might for someone else be, oh, well, that's okay, they're unhappy, but for us is actually extremely distressing? And that a level of unhappiness, which for you is manageable, is actually not manageable for us. Is that a dysfunction? Is it a sensitivity? Is it a mechanism? I know it's a mechanism for us to get away from it, but is it because we're very sensitive to it? Is it because we just can't manage it? I
think it's a very, very useful point, particularly for people who don't know sevens or are maybe in a relationship with seven, either at work or at home, and maybe don't necessarily understand that desire to move away from pain. Because if you're in a relationship with a seven and you're constantly just observing it as a flightiness or a shallowness or a sense of being superficial, I think what you've just said gives us a very different perspective of what's really going on beneath the surface. And that's really helpful understanding for people who have sevens in their lives.